Welcome to the Manifest with Kath Claire podcast, where we style our thoughts before our outfits and we step into our power. Guys, this is a big deal. This episode is so exciting. I am just so excited. How many times am I going to say that? To share this episode with you guys with Dr. Patrick Porter, the inventor of the BrainTap headset. I'm sure you guys have seen me talk about this on Instagram. It's my new favorite thing to take photos with, and it's been my secret weapon for so long. I'm excited to bring it to the forefront. I think you guys are going to be really surprised and, just as excited as I am to learn about how the BrainTap headset truly works to reprogram your mind, manifest things faster, to relax, to sleep better. I mean, there's a BrainTap session for literally everything. And it's a really, really, really phenomenal product. It's been one of the easiest things for me to promote. I'm an affiliate with them. So if after this episode you are interested in getting one for yourself to use at home, which I can't recommend enough, obviously, I'll have the link below in the podcast episode notes. It would mean a lot to me if you could use that because, like I said, I'm an affiliate and it would help support this little podcast adventure that I have going on that I'm really enjoying, and I hope you guys are too. So your support means the world. Also, don't forget to leave a review or I think you just hit like the little 5-star things. I know you guys think this is 5 stars, right? So I'm excited for you guys to hear this episode. Let me know what you think. Reach out to me on Instagram, email. I have literally all the social medias that are available, I'm pretty sure. Enjoy this episode with Dr. Patrick Porter. It is phenomenal. His research and his knowledge and his product are going to knock your socks off. Thank you, Dr. Porter, so much for taking the time to be on my podcast. I know you are a highly requested guy these days, so I am very honored and thank you so much.
Well, it's great to be here. We're out to better a billion brains, so I love doing these things.
I know. The mission is so amazing. Your just accomplishments and achievements are so inspiring. What is your first experience with manifesting and creating your own reality?
Well, I think the main ones, my father and I were actually sitting around the table. This was back in the early 80s. And we were talking about how we wanted to find somebody to partner with to show us how to do business in that. And even within an hour, Dr. Paul Adams called. And the weird part of that call was my dad told him we weren't interested. And after he hung up the phone, I said, Dad, what are you saying? I'll call Dr. Paul Adams back and tell him, hey, I'm interested in learning. And so I basically called him back and he gave me a mission of what to accomplish. And 4 years later, I bought his whole business from him and built out a 108 center franchise that I sold in 2002.
Oh, wow.
And that would have never happened if I didn't recognize the manifestation, because my dad was sitting right there and he didn't recognize it. So Part of it is, I think, recognizing.
Yes, absolutely. Recognizing that you have that power to create your reality. Can I just say my brain is like totally mystified right now hearing your voice coming from something other than the BrainTap headset?
Yeah, I get that quite a lot, yes.
Yeah, I bet. I have to ask, what BrainTap session did you do today?
The one I did today actually is, I record some for myself, and it's a little bit different than most. I have a good friend, J.J. Hurtak, and he wrote a book called The Keys of Enoch. Oh. And so I'm trying to learn ancient Sanskrit. So wow. In 1 year, I put what the definition is. In the other, I put the Sanskrit message, and I'm learning. That's how I accelerate learning to do that. But if I'm just listening, typically my morning sessions involve one of the AM programs that we have.
Gotcha, yeah.
If I'm not doing one of but I'm always recording. So typically I have to listen to whatever is the most recent recording.
Okay.
I'm probably the only person that listened to all 1,300 many times because I created them.
Yes. Wow. That is so freaking cool. You are literally an inventor. And I was looking back and I saw that your book, Awaken the Genius, came out in 2004. So 10 years before the BrainTap headset, correct? Because that was 2014?
Yeah, well, actually, we built the MC Square in 1986.
Oh.
And it won an award at the Consumer Electronics Show in 1989. I've built 15 different models.
Oh, wow.
The BrainTap is actually in its 5th generation right now. So we haven't changed the name. We used to change the name every time we had a major improvement. So we stopped doing that. Now we just call it version levels.
Oh, okay. So I feel like you've had experience with acknowledging your own genius for a while now. So what was it like just constantly awakening and having the courage and confidence to go towards your genius?
Well, I think the main thing was once I got a taste of the power of visualizing and then realizing those dreams, which actually we could probably go back in time to when I was in high school, because I got 10 varsity letters when I was in high school, which was very rare.
Yeah.
But I did that because I started in track and wrestling. I got varsity letters every year. And then in football, I got 2, and I became a 3-sport captain. And I was really, if you'd have met me when I was in 8th or 7th, 8th grade, I was very little. It wasn't very strong, but just used my mind and actually followed up with a book called As a Man Thinketh.
I love that
what
book.
I think is really important, because faith without works is dead. You can't just visualize the manifestation. You got to do the work and be prepared for the opportunities. And I think that helped. And a series of events helped me to manifest that, because I didn't realize our new coach lived on the track that I was running every day. I never missed a day of running in 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And I would run right by my coach's house, which I didn't know him because he wasn't our coach at that time. But when they went to when he came in on board and became our football coach, he used me as the example that he always saw me out running, and I was always at the track working out, because I needed to work harder than the other people because I didn't have the natural talent. I had to cultivate it and build it.
Wow. What? So I wanted to note that I love the BrainTap, especially when I was pregnant, because, obviously I'm limiting my caffeine intake, and, you're trying to do as many organic things as you can with your own energy in that time. And you're so tired. So my to-do list didn't change. If anything, it got longer, and I would put on the BrainTap, and I think it's the 10-minute, what's the name of it? I wrote it down here. It's just the beats, and I would be sitting there with the BrainTap on, and literally within 2 minutes, I felt like I was jumping out of my skin and just had to get things done. And the full session would have been 10 minutes. So it's incredible how the BrainTap, with your own energy and your own brain, literally changes you right then and there, changes your state.
Well, most people don't realize that we are actually light beings, that we crave, want, and desire energy in the form of light, sound, and vibration. We have on the cells, each cell has something called chromophores. These are little batteries, and they can absorb energy in all sorts of different ways. And most people think we get our food primarily from what we eat, but we get our energy mostly from our breath, in what we're doing there, but also the flow of energy. So what we're doing in those sessions, especially those 10-minute sessions, whether it be the SMR, sensory motor rhythm, or alpha, we call those digital coffee because they excite the nervous system. But it's not like a caffeine high, but we still call it digital coffee because people feel that energy surging, because the body actually absorbs it through something called photobiomodulation. So when we do that, and it's healthy because our body wants that light, especially the 470 nanometer to 650 nanometer light. That's one of the favorite light sources that our body really craves. So it gives us energy.
Wow. That's a lot. That is really cool. Digital coffee. That's exactly what it feels like. And so I think it was the quick cat nap session that I would do whenever I was feeling like tired and it was like, dark outside. I'd put that thing on and man, I would be ready to go for just, I don't even know, hours it felt like. It's so incredible. What would you say is your favorite success story for yourself, or that you've heard from someone else who's had their brain changed by BrainTap that you've heard?
Yeah. Well, I think my favorite, there's been so many, but my favorite was a woman who came to see me, and she was diagnosed that she was going to die in 6 weeks.
Oh.
And when she came in, she said that she had an autoimmune dysfunction where her body was literally turning on itself. So the white marker cells were destroying the healthy cells. And so I set up an appointment with her. I saw her for 3 weeks. And then I said, okay, I'm going to schedule this next one out for 4 weeks. And she said, well, I've been diagnosed that I'm going to die in 6 weeks. I only have 3 weeks left to live. And I said, no, I said, you've changed that. I said, your body's not the same. I said, the immune system is controlled by, there's something called psychoimmunology, which means your psychology affects your immune system. So she was in a state of perpetual fear, and her nervous system was basically locked into fight or flight. As soon as we unlocked that, I remember her coming in 7 weeks later. When she came in the first time, she looked like she was ready for her funeral. She was wearing all black. She was depressed.
Oh, gosh.
And I just told her, focus on all the positive, do your BrainTap sessions, go home, listen to, watch as many comedies as you can, get laughing, start enjoying life, live it as every day's your last day. And I don't know if she's still alive because she's in Virginia Beach, but last time she was alive for 5 years after that. I know for sure, because when I was living in Virginia Beach, she would always come to our events. And that just changed, because when people are told there is nothing fixed about our human body, this is one fact that I hope your listeners really listen to. We are 99% energy. 99.9%. We're not physical beings. We're actually, science has proved we are light beings. And it's not a metaphysical concept any longer, because we know that through biophotic exchange, 99% of our gene expression changes every 40 seconds, which means every microsecond, we're changing literally millions of cell expressions. So if we change our attitude and beliefs, we can change the way our body shows up. And it kind of explains why some people have these instantaneous healings, or they see the light and their body realigns. There's more to this reality than we know. But one thing I do know for sure after, almost 40 years of doing this is, if somebody truly believes in their heart that they can transform and change, the body will follow suit and create health and healing in that moment, because it's just a moment away. It's a thought away. If we can change that. And of course, if we're eating the healthy foods, drinking really healthy water, getting plenty of sleep, that all helps as well. But the thoughts are so important.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And you're so right. I truly believe, and now I love that science is backing it up. I've noticed just over the past couple of months, just on my own blog, my highest performing posts are things that people never would listen to, 5 years ago, talking about the BrainTap. And I think people are just actually so hungry for this information, and not only the information, but tools to help them actually put it into effect into their everyday lives. Have you noticed the rise of this?
Oh, yeah. I think that ever since people like Jim Quick, Jack Canfield, Dave Asprey, when they've been using it, showing themselves using it. And I mean, even we had meetings with Deepak Chopra, and he loves the idea of conscious evolution through technology. The way I explain it to people is these are all ancient traditions that we're just making them modern technology, and people now can understand it because we're putting science around it. But the technology has been around since the dawn of history. It's just not been as accessible and as easy to use. And I think now people are going, they now realize that they're stressed out. I mean, when they're being told 2 weeks, we're going to do this, then 4 weeks, we're going to do that, then it extends to 6 months, then it extends to a whole year. People are in such a state of stress that anything that can relieve it in a natural way, they're very open to. We've had very positive responses over the last 2 years, for sure.
Wow, yeah, and it's just probably growing. I mean, your mission to change 1 billion brains is so freaking awesome. I love that. I recently went to, are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Oh, yes. Yeah, he's one of our... when we bring him out to Quantum University, we're also speaking to him about, you can put a bug in there. I've had 2 conversations with bringing his sessions onto BrainTap. I would love to have his meditations on.
Wow. 2 of my worlds colliding. That's awesome. Yeah. I've been to 4 or 5 of his advanced workshops, and I just saw him in September. And hearing the science, that he was presenting was so awesome. I mean, I remember the first time I saw him, there were scientists picketing his events, he's a quack, woo-woo, or whatever their signs were saying. And now people can't get enough of him. It's like the same thing with the BrainTap. People are just going crazy for it. And it makes my heart so happy to finally see people awakening to their own power.
Yes, for sure. And he's doing a great job. I know his show on Gaia Rewired is awesome,
Oh,
for
yeah.
people that want to learn, the basics of neurophysiology.
Yes. And what's your take on the brain tap and the subconscious mind from a scientific standpoint?
Well, like Bruce Lipton says, 95% of our life is ran by our subconscious.
Right.
I like to call it the other than conscious because
right.
there's nothing sub about it. So when we think about what we're trying to do more than anything else is put us into an experience where we have access to, for lack of a better word, the morphogenetic field. We live in a field of infinite resources, but if we limit that by our conscious decisions and choices. So if we can tap more into that, they say that our conscious mind can do 7 plus or minus things at any one time, any more, and we get super stressed. And that's what people are doing, unfortunately. But our subconscious does literally millions, in fact, trillions of activities every second, and it does it with ease. So this is the way that our life should be. We should be tuning in with ease and going with flow in the direction of our goals and allowing the subconscious, or the other than conscious, I like to call it, to bring us the resources and skills we need as we need them.
Right. And I love that you use other than conscious. I've heard that in the brain tap because I feel like the subconscious kind of has gotten, a little bit of a bad rap amongst, the books I read and things. It's like, oh, it's your subconscious's fault. That's why you're not manifesting. And like, that's okay, but, and tell me, so you said your dad was influential in part of getting into the personal improvement industry?
Yes, my dad was a very gifted alcoholic. So he went in and out of facilities his whole life until he got help. And he went to a Silva. I don't know if you ever heard of the Silva method.
Yes, yeah.
My dad was one of those instructors. He was one of the first in Michigan, and actually first in the United States. They called them the silver instructors because there were 20 of them. And basically for my whole childhood, especially through high school, I would be going on weekends. If I didn't have a sporting event, I was going to help him for his events. So I've probably taken that course about 100 times.
Oh, wow.
And that really set the foundation that, they call it going to level. And we would use a sound in the Silva method. They called it the Silva sound. And what we now know in science is isochronic tones. That's what they were using in the room to set the frequency of the room so everybody could reach those deeper states of alpha that were necessary to do the exercises.
Wow. And that's implemented in the brain tap as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So explain also, there's lights that go into your ears while you're doing the brain tap. So is that the meridians that are in our ears, or what's the significance of that light?
We have, through our eyes, our ears, our hands and feet, people can read those because we have junction points where all the meridians. In America, we usually look at the spine like a chiropractor, energy through the body. In India, they look at the chakra system. And then in China, they look at the meridian system. So we can measure all of those three with our NeuroCheck device that we have. So we can, and what we wanted to do with the ear lights, number one, the reason we have lights in the eyes, so people understand that, is your hearing is 30% visual. So if we don't activate the visual cortex, 1/3 of your brain actually will shut down during a meditation. That's why it takes so long for people to learn how to meditate on their own, and why we keep that frontal lobe going. And we need energy in the brain to make it work. So we're feeding the brain what it needs most, which is light energy. Dr. Cousins, he's probably the biggest proponent of light therapy. He says the most underprescribed nutrient on earth today is light. So we need to bring that light into the brain. We can bring it in through the eyes and the ears because they're direct paths. All of the blood in the body flows through the ears every 45 seconds. So what happens with light, especially red and blue light, is the body loves that light, so it will be absorbed by the hemoglobin. And then it's put throughout the body. It circulates throughout the body until that photon finds a cell that's about to die, which they call apoptosis. And it will exchange it for that energy. So what we're doing is we're giving energy to the brain, because what happens when most people meditate, they literally fall asleep or they stay in a high anxiety state. They very rarely, and we've scanned over 30,000 brains. I have a handful of people that I've scanned in that time that can meditate on their own. and without the help of like a guided imagery or something, because their brain just dysregulates and their monkey mind takes over. So the light actually is the energy, and one of the best ways to deliver it is through there. And what we can tell, there's devices now where we can measure energy across meridians, and we can show how using the BrainTap actually energizes the whole system.
Wow.
So that's the key there. And also it's broadcast, even though those lights look to be solid, they're actually flickering 197 times a second. And that's actually happens to be a Auger frequency that we know we're frequency beings, like I said, energy. We know that our body is always matching the frequency of our surroundings. And that's our adaptive nervous system and our epigenetic system. So what happens when it's getting that frequency of light, the body is being told, turn off that sympathetic overload, what we call sympathetic escape, because people will escape into their sympathetic system and do nothing. That's the freeze response that actually happens. They can't flee anymore. There's no place to go. So they basically freeze, they shut down the system, and then our nervous system doesn't function at the highest level. Our nervous system functions at the highest level when we're able to flow between these different states, not the stress. Not that stress isn't bad, but stress is just a process. So if we learn how to move stress through the body, it doesn't affect us anymore. The old saying, you don't pray to God to get rid of your stresses. You pray to have the energy and the fortitude to overcome them. And that's really where I think BrainTap comes in, is we're going to give you the capacity to handle that next stressful event and handle it with grace and power.
Right. Capacity is exactly that. And it doesn't matter which program. I guess the sleep ones, it tunes down your energy a little bit, but any of the other ones, it doesn't matter if I'm doing one about finances or stepping into the center of my life, the quick cat nap, whatever it is. I can literally feel I'm not a scientist, but these words that you're saying, I use context clues because I know how it feels. The BrainTap literally lights you up.
Yes.
In the best way. And it's not this synthetic, drug or coffee or anything. It's your own, it's light. Yeah, light energy. That's exactly how it feels. And it's so free. It feels like freeing.
Yes, exactly. Our nervous system, we want to have, these bodies were designed to be outside when the sun's out and, collecting energy all day long. And unfortunately, most people spend their time inside the house or driving their cars, and they don't get out and touch the earth and do the things that our bodies are designed to do.
Oh, out collecting energy. Right. And I feel like people are afraid of the sun because everyone says it gives you, cancer or whatever.
Well, that's a unique thing. We found out when I went to India, one of the things we found out was this Chronos therapy or light therapy. They call it Chronos therapy because that's what it was back in the Vedas. This actually, they used to put people that had brain disorders, they would have them sit outside between 3:30 and 4:30 in the morning because that's when the highest dose of infrared light hits the planet.
Oh, wow.
And so they were already doing things that we do today back in ancient times. And I don't know how they knew it. There's always these answers that can't be, or these questions that can't be answered.
Yeah.
But we know the light. And the one thing that they said was that in their scriptures, it talks about when you do that in the morning, if you had to work in the fields, you would get up and do your yoga or your Tai Chi or whatever in the morning, because if you got 2 hours of infrared light, the light receptors in the body would be full and you wouldn't burn.
Wow.
So our body is, we're designed to protect ourselves, but we don't get outside and do that. And a lot of people wonder why we do yoga. Like when I studied with Yogi Bhajan and went to the Sikhs facility in Phoenix, I was there for 5 years. We would get up at 3:30 in the morning and do yoga, and you'd always end with the temple doors opening up and seeing the sunrise, because Phoenix, 360 days of the year you're going to get sunrise or whatever, and it's just beautiful. But that's part of the ritual, the rising of the sun. And in ancient times, we knew the secret of activating our biological system by tuning to the light of our sun. I tell people it's not just Superman that gets his superpowers from the sun. We do as well. We need to, or we have to do it synthetically, like with the BrainTap or with other red light therapies.
Wow, that is making so much sense. Just going back to Dr. Joe, when we go to his events, he'll do walking meditations that early in the morning, and it's always synced with the sunrise. And it's always so euphoric. So that makes so much sense. And he always calls 4 a.m., the magic hour. But I'm wondering if you saying that's the highest amount of infrared light around that time on the planet. He always recommends even just doing your meditations at home around that time, or like whatever creativity things that, stir your spirit. That makes so much sense. There's more light around.
Yep.
Wow, cool. So I also read that you have 8 siblings.
Yep, I have 5 brothers and 3 sisters. They're all still out there doing their things. I have a brother and a nephew that work with us here at BrainTap. The rest are out there doing their own thing.
Nice. I'm the oldest of 9 myself.
Wow. Okay.
I don't meet very many people that have that same family dynamic, so that's pretty cool. So what would you say is your favorite BrainTap session?
My favorite is one I did with a guy, Robert Schofield, who wrote the book Busting Loose from the Money Game. Ooh. Back in my early, I worked it out with him. That's a session that's in the Wealth series and the Power User.
Oh, I'm sure I've done that one.
That book, it changed my life back in the early days when I was first starting out in business, that I didn't understand the money game, and then this is all a game here, that this is just one big illusion. Right. And if you learn how to convert all that nervous, anxious energy into positive supporting energy, you can change the illusion. You can, and I have been very blessed that for whatever reason, I've always been able to manifest whatever monies I need, whatever I think about. And
That's awesome.
Even with the very first light and sound machine, when I met the people, I was told I was going to meet them. I was told the person's name even by a friend of mine. His name was Gil Gilly, and he could read minds, literally.
Oh, wow.
And he told me where I'd meet her, how I'd meet her. And when I met her, sure enough, he said I was going to meet somebody who's going to teach me about a technology that's going to revolutionize my field. Whoa. And when I met them in Vegas, because I was staying at his suite in the Sahara, I used to do the lead. I used to do a show with him, and I was his warm-up act. And he was the main liner. But he told me her name was Linnea. I tell the story in my book, Awaken the Genius, a little bit, but I don't tell this part of the story because people think I was crazy because I was in the
I love the
90s.
crazy stuff.
But when I met her, she showed me this piece of equipment. It was about the size of a microwave oven, and I loved it. It was light and sound, but you had to do it by hand. It wasn't done with the computers. And I had a super trip. I mean, literally, I was flying through space.
Oh, amazing.
And I knew everybody. It was the best. And I've done a lot of different trippy things with BrainTap and even psilocybin studies and things like that.
Yeah.
This was as real as anything. And when I came out of it, I said, wow, that's awesome. I said, I want to buy one of those. I didn't have any money. And she said it was $10,000.
Holy.
And I thought, wow, this was back in 80, I guess it was 86, 85.
Oh, gosh.
But what happened was a series of unfortunate events happened to the company. The owner died and didn't leave any plans for the electronics. Well, I had an undergraduate degree in electronics. So I said, where are you going to go after this? And he said, we have family in Scottsdale. We're going to go there. And I said, well, you know what? I have an office in Scottsdale. Let's meet at my office. Let's see how we can reverse engineer this. And we formed the company Light and Sound Research, and we hired people to help us create it. And that's how we created the very first system. Wow. Because I didn't let that $10,000 stand in the way. I actually got 2 of them. And I didn't have to pay for them like other people. We actually built them. So, and then from that, we built our portable one. So, I mean, I believe that anything that you're meant to do, money should never stand in the way of you having it or doing it.
Yes, I completely agree. But I have to go back. So wait, who was reading your mind?
His name was Gil Gilly. Okay. He was grown. I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Ernest Holmes. He started Church of Religious Science.
I think I've read about him here and there.
Yeah, this Gilly grew up with him he was born in Oklahoma, but he grew up being able to read the minds of people around him. I actually had quite a few friends when I was working with him. My dad worked with him a lot closer than I did, but we knew him from something called the ESP Forum, and he's like, my uncle was still drinking. This was back in the early 80s, and we couldn't find his alcohol. And he said, it's in Phoenix, there's these little ways in the back behind the houses you can drive on. He said, go to the dumpster 3 doors down from you, and behind there's going to be a bag, and that's where he's keeping all of his alcohol.
Oh my gosh,
we went there and found it. So, I mean, he's one of those guys that can do like remote viewing, different things. It was just incredible. And last I saw him was he lives in Phoenix area. He might still be alive, but he was 84 years old the last time I saw him here, like 6 years ago.
Wow, that's so interesting. I was talking to Kelly Howe the other day, and she kind of had a similar experience with her technology with BrainSync. She met a clairvoyant who basically read her mind and told her what she was going to be doing and all of that. So I was like, man, I want to meet someone like that to read my mind. I got to find them.
I had a person in Sedona too, Patricia Shaldeagle. I still have both recordings, and she told me the same thing. In fact, she even told me where I was going to meet my wife and what we were going to be doing, and why we couldn't get together at that moment, and how it was going to happen 2 years later, and it all happened.
Wow. So are all these people like, they just born with this talent? That's amazing.
Yeah, I think Patricia Rochelle was actually trained by Gil Gilly. So she had some skills, but then I met her through Gilly. So, but I remember meeting a person once where I had a list of questions in my pocket, and I was going to ask her. We're sitting across from each other, and she proceeded to answer all the questions, but I didn't know it. And then when she said, "Do you have any questions?" I pulled out my paper and I went down, and she answered them all in order. So there are people out there that just defy.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so there's, I get to go to India when the borders are open and things, and so I get to meet some pretty incredible people on that side of it, and there are people there that they just know things about you, and I have no idea how they know. It's one of those things where science can't validate it right now, but we're very lucky that we work with the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences. So we get access to gurus and people who are expanded consciousness, and we get to basically spend time with them in the lab, and they just start telling you things
wow.
To them, they say it's just written there. They can read your, I guess you call the Akashic records. They can just read that history of your life around you.
Wow, that is incredible. And that's an amazing opportunity to get access to those people. Mm-hmm. That is so cool. So explain to me the significance of alpha brainwaves.
Well, the big alpha controls a lot of things like inspiration, creativity, but also is the part of the brain. If that alpha isn't high in, let's say, across the frontal lobes, when we did our dementia study, we found that the left hemisphere was moving slower than the right. So once we matched that and we created a series called The New Mind that's inside of BrainTap, we were able to balance out these hemispheres, and these symptoms of dementia went away. They no longer had stress, anxiety, fear. They were sleeping better. Now we balance out every session in BrainTap to balance out the hemispheres, but the alpha is so important for cognition. Also, if you have a nonverbal child, what we found with Joquita Handy, who's one of our doctors out of Southern California, she works a lot she's a speech pathologist, and she finds that about 90% of the kids after 4 to 6 weeks worth of BrainTap will start speaking. Wow. Because it's an alpha problem. They don't have alpha. So if you don't have a lot of alpha, you'll have the tendencies. Like if I meet somebody who has the tendencies like an autistic brain, I'm going to probably, when I brain scan them, I'm going to find that they're missing alpha.
Oh, interesting. What age can children start using the BrainTap?
Well, we say age 4, but we have a video online with a baby that's crying with colic, and every time the mother puts the BrainTap on, the baby stops crying. It kind of went viral with BrainTap because it was so funny. But they were just a little baby. But I don't think they need it when they're younger than 4 because our brain is totally wired when we're born. We unwire it as we get smarter. So, when they're in that field of infinite possibility and their brain's really lit up as a child. Now, unless they've been compromised, a lot of kids, for one reason or another, maybe they can't handle vaccines or something like that. They get compromised. So to detox the brain, they could start using the BrainTap earlier. Okay,
cool. My son is about to be 2, so maybe I'll start putting that thing on him when he gets a couple years older. That's amazing. Yep. So what else is going on with BrainTap? So you're constantly evolving it.
Yeah, we always have new and better. The version 5 just came out. I think the biggest thing we're doing is we're adding additional sessions. Like for those people, we have a Breathworks folder now inside of the Power User.
That. Okay.
And it's done by a guy named Noah, and he is incredible what he did, and he's given us access to his We have more to put up there, but I think there's 10 up there right now.
Okay.
And they're really good for morning activations. You can wear your BrainTap and go through the breathing exercises. So while the biggest thing we're finding is that while the physiology is doing something, we can hardwire that in with the light and sound technology in the frequencies of BrainTap. So while you're doing the breathing and you're getting the nervous system back online, now you can train the brain to keep it that way.
Oh, wow. Sounds super powerful. I was going to ask you about breathwork if that was part of your practice. So that's super cool that that's added into the BrainTap. So is that part of the BrainTap Pro?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. I'll have to do that. It sounds kind of trippy. I feel like whenever I do breathwork and the BrainTap, that sounds like it could supercharge me for the day.
Oh, yeah. You can also have that psychotropic breathing. I would love to have Joe's breathing techniques on there too, but we don't have them yet. So,
wow, yeah, that would be cool. So have you been doing breathwork for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many. When I did, I actually had back in the 80s when I was doing a rebirthing seminar, which is really connected breath. I had a visualization or a reality check that said I was born in front of the hospital in a cab, and I'd never heard that story before. So my mother was still alive at the time, and I called her and I said, I went to this rebirthing seminar, and we did it underwater with a tube where we're doing connected breath, and then you have this holotropic breathing. And she said, yeah, you were born in front of the Lila Hospital in a cab. And she said, you've been in a hurry ever since. That's her.
Oh my gosh. So you had a vision and it was the 100% true.
Yep. Wow. And then I did a lot of Kriya breathing. I had 2 published papers here this year on Kriya breathing that we did with Ames Institute. It didn't have to do with BrainTap, but it just had to do with when you do the right breathing techniques, you can also balance out the frontal lobes for dementia and anxiety. So we did a whole study on that, teaching people how to do this connected breath. And then we published it to show that we could match the 2 hemispheres by doing the nasal breathing.
Is that the Kundalini breath? Am I thinking, or how do you spell Kriya?
Kriya.
Okay, I think
there's a Kriya breath. Basically, there's a lot of different ones. It just means a connected breath.
Okay.
Specific. This one happened to be one where we would breathe in and out of the nostrils to balance out the hemispheres, and then we could show how they could balance those 2 using HRV and EEG to show the result.
Oh, okay, cool.
Breath is important. Our bodies are designed, every negative emotional state that people are in, you can link back to lack of breath. Most people do not know how to breathe. They breathe, but that's why they catch themselves every once in a while. If you're ever around somebody, they go, they have that little catch in their breath.
Yes.
That's because they don't know how to breathe. So we have to train our breath. And I think the safest one, if people are listening and wondering, the safest one to do is you breathe into the mental count of 4. This is going to trigger your sympathetic system. And then when you breathe out to the mental count of 8, you're going to trigger your parasympathetic. Now, you connect that breath. And while you're doing it, what'll happen is you'll notice that you can breathe out for longer. You only want to breathe into 4 because you want to trigger that sympathetic, but you don't want to cause yourself to have a panic attack or something. But that's one of the most powerful ones to start with, and it's safe. And usually people use it to go to sleep because it'll put you out because it'll calm down the nervous system.
Got it. Okay, yeah, so that'll be great for anybody listening and for myself. And I had one last question for you. So what is the connection? I've heard like the heart brain, that wording tossed around lately. What is the connection with the BrainTap and the heart?
Well, the biggest reason that we use it is there's 4,000 neutrino cells, they call them, or brain cells in the heart. So what we're doing is we use the heart rate variability to show the effectiveness of what BrainTap's doing. We don't really affect the heart other than we're tuning the body through frequency response. Part of that is what's happening with the ear lights. And we're just calming down the body, but we can measure it. Like anybody out there that has any kind of heart rate variability, whether it be a biostrap or a ring, we have a very expensive one. We use a clinical model called the NeuroCheck that we created with the Russian partners. But you'll see that when you're doing the BrainTap session, most of the people in our study with NIH, we had a 30% improvement in neurological function in just one visit. And then that became your normal after 30 days of using BrainTap at least once a day. We measure that through the heart because your heart is communicating with your brain. They now know the heart. Some people will say the gut's running the show, but the heart and the gut are actually running the show more than the brain between our ears. The brain between our ears is more like a Google laptop that has to go to the internet and get information and programs. It's just a transactor of information. But that's why when we get a paraplegic can still digest and metabolize food and stay alive, because there's also a brain in our gut. But the heart brain is so important, because if we put our heart into, that's why emotions are so important when you're meditating or you're manifesting something. If you can really begin to feel as if you're there, putting in the color, the sound, the experience, making it as rich as possible, then we have magnetic waves. This is our heart. And these magnetic waves, they now know we can measure them up to 18 feet away, where the electrical waves of the brain, we don't know. We have to actually put probes on the brain. And the other thing that we know with these magnetic waves, we also all give off biophotic energy in the form of infrared. I don't know if you've heard one of my talks, but we now know that when you're in a state of gratitude, love, and peace, that they can measure from your heart center 200 times more light emission. We actually emit infrared light into the world. That's why people like Tom Brady, who has TB12, the clothing line, that was actually designed by my science officer. And what he did was he put ceramics into the clothing, and these ceramics reflect back our own infrared to heal us.
Whoa.
So when you meet a real healer, somebody who's a highly intuitive or a healer, they're actually throwing off more light. People can change just by entering into their field, because their field is going to be much more powerful. So that's all generated by the heart. So when we are communicating, we communicate more through our heart center than we do through our brain centers.
Whoa. 200 times more light emission when you're feeling grateful. I knew gratitude was powerful, but hearing that is blowing my mind. That is wow, that's awesome. I definitely need to work on being more grateful. And the significance that you also mentioned of doing the BrainTap for 30 days. So if someone gets the BrainTap, obviously you'll feel the improvement after one session. I know I did, but the significant improvement that you said your brain will stay changed if you do it for 30 days, correct?
Yeah, well, what we found, we just had a new research project. We're in a bigger study right now in Brazil, but we took music, beautiful music, and a 50-minute track, and we made a session that was 5 minutes, nothing. We measured with the HRV and EEG to see what the brain was doing. We had them listen to music. They had a great response. There's something called the Mozart effect. The brain balances during these kind of experiences. But after that 15 minutes, what we found was the brain went right back to a stress state. So then we took that same piece of music and we put the algorithm of BrainTap in it. What they did was they went deeper into the alpha theta brain rhythm, but also at the end of it, they never returned back to their stress state for 72 hours. So if you can interrupt that by doing it sooner, now you create a new baseline. That's what I'm saying. So you keep interrupting the pattern so that the brain doesn't get to go back to its dysregulated state. It remembers this harmonic state of communication, where the left and right hemisphere are communicating in the proper way, so that we stay, basically we call it brain fitness. So we keep the brain fit to be able to do the things we need to do during the day.
Right. So you raise your baseline, you raise your energy, your frequency, and you can get in alignment with bigger things in your life. And manifest. I call it my manifesting. It enhances my manifesting powers, the BrainTap. Anytime that I do it consistently, things start getting a little more magical around me.
That's great.
I think everybody needs to do it. I also wanted to mention my brother's a dentist, and that's how I actually found out about the BrainTap. His business partner, she does like energy healing work as well as dentistry. And the BrainTap is a great tool for dental patients, because dentistry, everyone's afraid of going to the dentist and there's always anxiety around sitting in the chair. So they've been using the BrainTap to help calm down patients.
That's great. Yeah. We wish we could get more dentists doing that.
I know.
My dentist, I just set him up, though. I go to California to meet him, and he didn't realize that he could use BrainTap. He was using it for himself. I said, you could be using it in here. Right. So I had to step him through. Some people just don't get that they can start using it in their clinical practice
or even
as well.
In one of the ones, I don't think it's in the Pro, but you'll know, you can even do one before childbirth because I was terrified. So there's literally a BrainTap for phobias, for everything. So any problem that you have in your life, the BrainTap just seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yes.
And before I let you go, what's the most surprising use of BrainTap that you've heard of, like for the BrainTap headset?
Wow, that's a good question. I think we've seen everything under the sun. People have been using it for, but what I tell people is if it's something that gets worse under stress, then it's probably best to use BrainTap with that.
Right.
But I've seen it for, I think when we first started hearing about it being used for autism, that shocked me. And when I called Joquita Handy, Dr. Handy, when she was using it, I said, "What's going on?" She goes, "Well, we're using it for autism." I'm going, "Really?" Because I didn't even know you could use it for that. She said, "Oh yeah." I said, when I put it on the kids and the parents see that, they don't go home without it because it downregulates all that stress. And I think that was the biggest to me that they could do it. But we've seen it for every dysfunction you could think of. With our 2,400 clinics, they're always testing it, under different situations.
Yeah.
Of course, the most obvious is stress reduction and pain control. But like you said, we have a stress-free childbirth, stress-free surgeries. We have, and we also have sports ones. So people use it we have Olympic athletes and pro athletes using it.
Oh, I saw that. Oh, that's super cool. So I mean, I feel like the BrainTap is such an easy sell. It definitely changes your life tenfold. So anybody that's listening, I highly recommend it. But thank you for coming on today, Dr. Porter. Your knowledge and everything you're doing for humanity is completely inspiring. I can't thank you enough. But anybody who's listening, you can find Dr. Porter on braintap.com. His Instagram page is at Dr. Patrick Porter. He's done TED Talks, his amazing, helpful YouTube videos, and also 3 books that you can get on Amazon. So thank you again, Dr. Porter, for coming on and taking the time to spread your expertise on my channel. I am so thankful.
Well, thank you. And I hope we help you manifest all your dreams as well. So,
thank you so much. You have a great day. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode of Manifest with Kath Claire, the podcast. I'm your host, Kath Claire, and all of the juicy deets of where to find me are in the episode notes. So be sure to give this a review, subscribe, whatever you got to do so that you don't miss the next one. Have a great, magical day.